She was the judge who held the power of life and death in her hands, yet no one knew the horrifying secret that had haunted her for years. Behind the robes and the gavel, Clara Winters carried a darkness so deep that it threatened to destroy everything she had built. But when her father, the man who had stolen her innocence, came to her house one last time, the nightmare she'd buried for decades clawed its way to the surface. And in a moment of blind rage, Clara made a choice that would change everything. This is the story of a woman who killed her family to protect a truth too terrible to ever be told. Clara Winters was always the perfect child, the perfect student, and the perfect professional. She rose quickly through the ranks of law school and into the position of a judge by the time she was 34. Her intellect, beauty, and dedication made her an icon in the judicial world. But behind her well-composed demeanor, behind her impeccable judicial robes, there was a trauma, a horrific trauma that no one knew about. Her father, Gregory Winters, a wealthy and influential man in their small town, had always been a man of power. He had everything: money, respect, and control. But one thing he lacked was humanity. And when Clara was just 16, he took something from her that would destroy her forever. It began with a single moment. One evening when Clara's mother, Isabella Winters, was away on a business trip, her father approached her in the quiet of their large family estate. He wasn't the father she had once known, the man who had raised her with love and guidance. This was someone else entirely, the person who would forever break her. Clara had always trusted him, looked up to him, and admired him. But that night her father's touch was more than just paternal. It was sinister. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. Gregory Winters was a man driven by darkness, and his darkness had found a new target. For years, Clara's mind tried to protect her, convincing her that it was just a nightmare, a terrible, terrible nightmare. But the truth had been carved into her very being. And soon, the truth manifested itself in a way that no one could ignore. She was pregnant. She had no one to turn to. Her mother had never been particularly close to her, and the idea of confiding in anyone about the horrors she had endured felt like a betrayal to her entire existence. The law was supposed to protect her, but it failed her at her most vulnerable. As Clara's pregnancy advanced, so did her guilt, her shame, and her fury. She couldn't bear to carry the child. She couldn't bring a part of her father into the world. So she did what seemed like the only option left. She did it herself. She terminated the pregnancy, a decision that haunted her every day of her life. Years later, Clara found herself in the courtroom, dressed in black, a robe that she had fought for, a symbol of everything she'd endured to hide her shame and her rage. She had made a life for herself in law, and with each case, she buried her past deeper, further into the dark recesses of her mind. She told herself it was all behind her, but her past wasn't behind her. It was waiting. Clara had built a perfect family of her own. She had a husband, David Winters, who was a respected doctor, and 2 young children, Lily and Noah. The perfect family, the perfect life. But the truth had been festering, never quite healed. It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. One evening, after a particularly difficult case, Clara came home to find her husband in a heated argument with her father. Gregory had come to visit unannounced, as he often did, and David, sensing something wasn't right, confronted him. Words were exchanged, and Clara, not wanting any scene, stayed in the other room. But as the argument escalated, she overheard something that froze her heart. David had learned the truth. He had discovered that Clara's father was the source of her trauma, the man who had destroyed her life when she was just a girl. But it wasn't just the truth that broke her. It was the fact that her father had threatened to expose her secret, to ruin everything she had worked for. That night, Clara saw the man she had once admired, the man who had ruled her life, in a different light. He was no longer a father, no longer a pillar of strength. He was a monster, And her husband, the man she loved, had finally realized the monster she had been hiding all these years. Clara sat in the dark, staring at the reflection of herself in the window. Her mind was racing, filled with thoughts of revenge, betrayal, and power. Her father was going to take everything from her. He was going to destroy her family. He had already taken too much. The weight of the past, the weight of the secrets she had carried, had become unbearable. Clara's eyes darted to the drawer where she kept her gun, a gun she had inherited from her mother, a symbol of protection, of power. It had always been there, waiting for the right moment. And in that moment, Clara realized something. She had lived a life hiding from her own reflection, but now she would take control. She would be the one who made the decisions. No one would control her anymore. In the dead of night, as her family slept, Clara made her way to her father's room. She couldn't allow him to ruin everything she had built. She couldn't allow him to take her children from her. With a steady hand, she made sure that her family would never be the same. The morning after that night was the quietest Clara had ever known. When the police arrived, they found the Winters family in a tragic, violent scene. Gregory Winters, the powerful patriarch, lying dead in his bed, shot in cold blood. David, Clara's husband, was found next to him, his body mangled, a casualty of the war that had raged inside Clara's mind for so long. Clara, the judge who had lived a lifetime in control of the law, found herself sitting in the very courtroom she had once ruled. The once strong woman who had held the power of justice in her hands was now just another criminal. But she didn't regret it. She couldn't. As she was led away in handcuffs, Clara whispered to herself, "I did what had to be done. I took back what was mine." This is a story of betrayal, of a woman who lived a life of lies and darkness. It's a reminder that the scars of our past are not always visible, but they can shape the course of our lives. Sometimes, the most terrifying monsters we face are the ones we cannot see until it's too late. Clara's story was one of survival, but it was also a tragic tale of a woman who was destroyed by the very man who should have protected her. She was a judge, but in the end, she was judged by the very law she had once upheld. In the quiet after the storm, one thing was clear: there is no escaping the consequences of the past.